Hare Krishna. Dear devotees, welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupāda's books, right here in the live studios in Kythe, southeast England, just close to the English Channel, otherwise known as the Haven in Anglo-Saxon. And we're trying to bring back the old by making this an actual haven, by reading Srila Prabhupāda's books every day as much as possible. So if you remember yesterday, we had some problems with the internet. So although it was published, it was a little mistake by our sage, Teki, Abhayadas Brahmachari. It was meant not to be published. So we're going to make an arrangement to get that first one deleted because it was too much interference. So we're going to start again with chapter 87, Prayers by the Personified Vedas. This is a very highly sophisticated philosophical chapter. It's not like pastimes that we've been hearing, but it's extremely important because it's the foundation of being able to understand and appreciate Krishna properly. So, we have a guest that's come down from the top of his mountain. And he's living in a cave in the mountain and in Samadhi, hearing the Chaitanya Charitamrita for how many months we can't even calculate. And he's finished the correction of the files, the audio files, and we're just about ready to begin the final proof hearing of the audio book of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we welcome Rasika Shiromani, Hare Krishna, Hare Bol. Chapter 87, Prayers by the Personified Vedas. How's the internet? Okay so far? Yeah. King Parikshit inquired from Sukadeva Goswami about a very important topic in understanding transcendental subject matter. His question was, since Vedic knowledge generally deals with the subject matter of the three qualities of the material world, then how can it approach the subject matter of transcendence, which is beyond the approach of the three material modes? Since the mind is material and the vibration of words is a material sound, how can the Vedic knowledge expressing by material sound the thoughts of the material mind approach transcendence? Description of a subject matter necessitates describing its source of emanation, its qualities, and its activities. Such description can be possible only by thinking with the material mind and by vibrating material words. Brahman, or the absolute truth, has no material qualities, but our power of speaking does not go beyond the material qualities. How then can Brahman, the absolute truth, be described by your words? I do not see how it is possible to understand transcendence from such expressions of material sound. The purpose of King Parikshit's inquiry was to ascertain from Sukadeva Goswami whether the Vedas ultimately describe the absolute truth as impersonal or personal. Understanding of the absolute truth progresses in three features: impersonal Brahman, Paramatma localized in everyone's heart, and at last, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. The Vedas deal with three departments of activities. One is called karma kanda, or activities under Vedic injunction, which gradually purify one to understand his real position. The next is Jnanakanda, the process of understanding the absolute truth by speculative methods. And the third is Upasana Kanda, or worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and sometimes of the demigods also. The worship of the demigods recommended in the Vedas is ordered with the understanding of the demigod's relationship to the personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has many parts and parcels. Some are called swankshas, or his personal expansions, and some are called vibhinanshas, the living entities. All such expansions, both swanksha, swankshas, and vibhinanshas, are emanations from the original personality of Godhead. Swanksha expansions are called Vishnu Tattva, whereas the vibhinangsha expansions are called Jiva Tattva. The different demigods are Jiva Tattva. The conditioned souls are generally put into the activities of the material world for sense gratification. Therefore, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, to regulate those who are very much addicted to different kinds of sense gratification, the worship of demigods is sometimes recommended. For example, for persons very much addicted to meat eating, the Vedic injunction recommends that after worshipping the form of goddess Kali and sacrificing a goat, not any other animal, under Karma Kanda regulation, the worshippers may be allowed to eat meat. The idea is not to encourage one to eat meat, but to allow one who insists on eating meat to eat it under certain restricted conditions. Therefore, worship of the demigods is not worship of the absolute truth. But by worshipping the demigods, one gradually comes to accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead in an indirect way. This indirect acceptance is described in the Bhagavad Gita as avidhi. Avidhi means not bona fide. Since demigod worship is not bona fide, the impersonalists stress concentration on the impersonal feature of the absolute truth. King Parikshit's question was, which is the ultimate target of Vedic knowledge? This concentration on the impersonal feature of the absolute truth, or concentration on the personal feature? After all, both the impersonal and the personal feature of the Supreme Lord are beyond our material conception. The impersonal feature of the Absolute, the Brahman effulgence, is but the rays of the personal body of Krishna. These rays of the personal body of Krishna are cast all over the creation of the Lord, and the portion of the effulgence, which is covered by the material cloud, is called the created cosmos of the three material qualities, sattva, rajas, and tamas. How can persons who are within this clouded portion, called the material world, conceive of the absolute truth by the speculative method? In answering King Parikshit's questions, Sukadeva Goswami replied that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has created the mind, senses, and living force of the living entity for the purpose of sense gratification and transmigration from one kind of body to another, as well as for the purpose of allowing liberation from the material conditions. In other words, one can utilize the senses, mind, and living force for sense gratification and transmigration from one body to another, or for the matter of liberation. The Vedic injunctions are there just to give the conditioned souls the chance for sense gratification under regulative principles, and thereby also to give them the chance for promotion to higher conditions of life. Ultimately, if the consciousness is purified, one comes to his original position and goes back home, back to Godhead. The living entity is intelligent. One therefore has to utilize his intelligence over the mind and the senses. When the mind and senses are purified by the proper use of intelligence, then the conditioned soul is liberated. Otherwise, if the intelligence is not properly utilized in controlling the senses and mind, the conditioned soul continues to transmigrate from one kind of body to another, simply for sense gratification. Another point clearly stated in the answer of Sukadeva Goswami is that it is the mind, senses, and intelligence of the individual living entity that the Lord created. It is not... We'll read that again. Another point clearly stated in the answer of Sukadeva Goswami is that it is the mind, senses, and intelligence of the individual living entity that the Lord created. It is not stated that the living entities themselves were ever created. Just as the shining particles of the sun's rays always exist with the sun, the living entities exist eternally as parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But just as the sun rays are sometimes covered by a cloud, which is created by the sun, so the conditioned souls, although eternally existing as parts of the Supreme Lord, are sometimes put within the cloud of the material concept of life. That's very nice. But just as the sun rays are sometimes covered by a cloud, which is created by the sun, so the conditioned souls, although eternally existing as parts of the Supreme Lord, are sometimes put within the cloud of the material concept of life, in the darkness of ignorance. The whole Vedic process is to alleviate that darkened condition. Ultimately, when the senses and mind of the conditioned being are fully purified, he comes to his original position called Krishna consciousness, and that is liberation. In the Vedanta Sutra, the first sutra or code questions about the Absolute Truth. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. What is the nature of the Absolute Truth? The next sutra answers that the nature of the Absolute Truth is that he is the origin of everything. Whatever we experience, even in this material condition of life, is but an emanation from him. The Absolute Truth created the mind, senses, and intelligence. This means that the Absolute Truth is not without mind, intelligence, and senses. In other words, he is not impersonal. The very word created means that he has transcendental intelligence. For example, when a father begets a child, the child has senses because the father also has senses. The child is born with hands and legs because the father also has hands and legs. Sometimes it is said that man is made after the image of God. The Absolute Truth is therefore the Supreme Personality with transcendental mind, senses, and intelligence. When one's mind, intelligence, and senses are purified of material contamination, one can understand the original feature of the Absolute Truth as a person. The Vedic process is to promote the conditioned soul gradually from the mode of ignorance to the mode of passion, and from the mode of passion to the mode of goodness. In the mode of goodness, there is sufficient light for understanding things as they are. For example, from earth a tree grows, and from the wood of the tree, fire is ignited. In that igniting process, we first of all find smoke, and the next stage is heat, and then fire. When there is actually fire, we can utilize it for various purposes. Therefore, fire is the ultimate goal. Similarly, in the gross material stage of life, the quality of ignorance is very prominent. Dissipation of this ignorance takes place in the gradual progress of civilization, from the barbarian stage to civilized life, and when one comes to the stage of civilized life, he is said to be in the mode of passion. In the barbarian stage, or in the mode of ignorance, the senses are gratified in a very crude way, whereas in the mode of passion, or in civilized life, the senses are gratified in a polished manner. But when one is promoted to the mode of goodness, one can understand that the senses and the mind are engaged in material activities only due to being covered by perverted consciousness. When this perverted consciousness is gradually transformed into Krishna consciousness, then the path of liberation is opened. So it is not that one is unable to approach the Absolute Truth by the senses and the mind. Again, so it is not that one is unable to approach the Absolute Truth by the senses and the mind. The conclusion is, rather, that the senses, mind, and intelligence in the gross stage of contamination cannot approach, cannot appreciate the nature of the Absolute Truth. But when purified, the senses, mind, and intelligence can understand what the Absolute Truth is. The purifying process is called devotional service, or Krishna consciousness. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly stated that the purpose of Vedic knowledge is to understand Krishna, and that Krishna is understood by devotional service, beginning with the process of surrender. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, one has to think of Krishna always. One has to render loving service to Krishna always. And one always has to worship and bow down before Krishna. By this process only can one enter into the kingdom of God without any doubt. One who is enlightened in the mode of goodness by the process of devotional service is freed from the modes of ignorance and passion. In answering King Parikshit's question, Sukadeva Goswami used the word Atmane, which indicates the stage of Brahminical qualification in which one is allowed to study the Vedic scriptures known as the Upanishads. The Upanishads describe in different ways the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Lord. The Absolute Truth, the Supreme Lord, is called Nirguna. That does not mean that he has no qualities. It is only because he has qualities that the conditioned living entities can have qualities. It is only because he has qualities that the conditioned living entities can have qualities. The purpose of studying the Upanishads is to understand the transcendental qualities of the Absolute Truth, as opposed to the material qualities of ignorance, passion, and goodness. That is the way of Vedic understanding. Great sages, like the four Kumaras, headed by Sanaka, followed these principles of Vedic knowledge and came gradually from impersonal understanding to the platform of personal worship to the Supreme Lord, of the Supreme Lord. It is therefore recommended that we must follow the great personalities. Sukadeva Goswami is also one of the great personalities, and his answer to the inquiry of Maharaj Parikshit is authorized. One who follows in the footsteps of such great personalities surely walks very easily on the path of liberation and ultimately goes back home, back to Godhead. That is the way of perfecting this human form of life. Sukadeva Goswami continued to speak to Parikshit Maharaj. My dear king, he said, in this regard, I shall narrate a nice story. This story is important because it is in connection with Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This narration is a conversation between Narayan Rishi and the great sage Narada. Narayan Rishi still resides in Badarik Ashram and is accepted as an incarnation of Narayana. Badarik Ashram is situated in the northernmost part of the Himalaya mountains, and it is always covered with snow. Religious Indians still go to visit this place during the summer season when the snowfall is not very severe. Once, when Narada, the great devotee and ascetic among the demigods, was traveling among different planets, he desired to meet the ascetic Narayana personally in Badarik Ashram and offer him respects. This great sage incarnation of Godhead, Narayana Rishi, has been undergoing great penances and austerities from the beginning of the creation to teach the inhabitants of Bharatavarsha how to attain the highest perfectional stage of going back to Godhead. His austerities and penances are exemplary practices for the human being. The incarnation of God, Narayana Rishi, was sitting among many devotees in the village known as Kalapagram. Of course, these were not ordinary sages sitting with him, and the great sage Narada also appeared there. After offering his respects to Narayana Rishi, Narada asked him exactly the same question King Parikshit asked Sukadeva Goswami. Then the Rishi answered the following. Then the Rishi answered by following in the footsteps of his predecessors. He narrated a story of how the same question had been discussed on the planet known as Janaloka, which is above the Swargaloka planets, such as the Moon and Venus. On this planet, great sages and saintly persons live, and they once discussed the same point regarding the understanding of Brahman and his real identity. The great sage Narayana began to speak. My dear Narada, he said, I shall tell you a story which took place long, long ago. There was a great meeting of the denizens of the heavenly planets, and almost all the important brahmacharis, such as the four Kumaras, Sanandana, Sanaka, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumara, were attended. Their discussion was on the subject matter of understanding the absolute truth, Brahman. You were not present at that meeting because you had gone to see my expansion, Aniruddha, who lives on the island of Shwetadweep. In this meeting, all the great sages and brahmacharis very elaborately discussed the point about which you have asked me, and their discussion was very interesting. It was so delicate that even the Vedas were unable to answer the intricate questions raised. Narayana Rishi told Narada Ji that the same question Narada Ji had raised had been discussed in that meeting on Janaloka. This is the way of understanding through the parampara or disciplic succession. Maharaj Parikshit questioned Sukadeva Goswami, and Sukadeva Goswami referred the matter to Narada, who had in the same way questioned Narayana Rishi, who had put the matter to still higher authorities on the planet of Janaloka, where it was discussed among the higher authorities on the planet of Janaloka, or where it was discussed, I'll read that again. Maharaj Parikshit questioned Sukadeva Goswami, and Sukadeva Goswami referred the matter to Narada, who had in the same way questioned Narayana Rishi, who had put the matter to still higher authorities on the planet of Janaloka, where it was discussed among the great Kumaras, Sanatana, Sanaka, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumara. These four brahmacharis, the Kumaras, are recognized scholars in the Vedas and other Shastras. Their unlimited volumes of knowledge, backed by austerities and penances, are exhibited by their sublime, ideal character. They are very amiable and gentle in behavior, and for them there is no distinction between friends, well-wishers, and enemies. Being transcendentally situated, such personalities as the Kumaras are above all material considerations and are always neutral in respect to material dualities. In the discussions held among the four brothers, one of them, namely Sanandana, was selected to speak, and the other brothers became the audience to hear him. Sanandana said, after the dissolution of the whole cosmic manifestation, the entire energy and the whole creation in its nucleus form entered the body of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. The Lord at that time remains asleep for a long, long time, and when there is again necessity of creation, the Vedas personified assemble around the Lord and begin to glorify him, describing his wonderful transcendental pastimes, exactly like servants of a king. When the king is asleep in the morning, the appointed reciters come around his bedroom and begin to sing of his chivalrous activities. And while hearing of his glorious activities, the king gradually awakens. The Vedic reciters, or the personified Vedas, sing thus, O unconquerable Lord, you are the Supreme Personality. No one is equal to you or greater than you. No one can become more glorious in his activities. All glories unto you. All glories unto you. By your own transcendental nature, you fully possess all six qualities. As such, you were able to deliver all conditioned souls from the clutches of Maya. O Lord, we fervently pray that you kindly do so. All the living entities, being your parts and parcels, are naturally joyful, eternal, and full of knowledge. But due to their own faults, they imitate you by trying to become the supreme enjoyer. Thus they disobey your supremacy and become offenders. And because of their offenses, your material energy has taken charge of them. Thus, their transcendental qualities of joyfulness, bliss, and wisdom have been covered by the clouds of the three material qualities. This cosmic manifestation, made of the three material qualities, is just like a prison house for the conditioned souls. The conditioned souls are struggling very hard to escape from material bondage, and according to their different conditions of life, they have been given different types of engagement. But since all engagements are based on knowledge supplied by you. The conditioned souls can execute pious activities only when you mercifully inspire them to do so. Therefore, without taking shelter at your lotus feet, one cannot surpass the influence of the material energy. Actually, we, as personified Vedic knowledge, are always engaged in your service by helping the conditioned souls understand you. This prayer of the Vedas personified illustrates that the Vedas are meant for helping the conditioned souls to understand Krishna. All the Shrutis, or personified Vedas, offered glories to the Lord again and again, singing Jai, Jai. This indicates that the Lord is the most glorious. Of all his glories, the most important is his causeless mercy upon the conditioned souls in reclaiming them from the clutches of Maya. There are unlimited numbers of living entities in different varieties of bodies, some moving and some standing in one place. And the conditioned life of these living entities is due only to their forgetfulness of their eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the living entity wants to lord it over the material energy by imitating the position of Krishna, he is immediately captured by the material energy, and according to his desire is offered one variety of the 8,400,000 different kinds of bodies. Although undergoing the threefold miseries of material existence, the illusioned living entity falsely thinks himself the master of all he surveys. Under the spell of the material energy, represented by the threefold material qualities, the living entity is so entangled that he is not at all able to become free unless he is graced by the Supreme Lord. The living entity cannot conquer the influence of the material modes of nature by his own endeavor. But because material nature is working under the control of the Supreme Lord, the Lord is beyond its jurisdiction. Except for him, all living entities, from Brahma down to the ant, are conquered by the contact of material nature. Because the Lord possesses in full the 6 opulences of wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation, he alone is beyond the spell of material nature. Unless the living entity is situated in Krishna consciousness, he cannot approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet the Lord, by his omnipotency, can dictate from within, as the Supersoul, how a living entity can gradually come to him, even while performing his ordinary work. As the Lord advises in the Bhagavad Gita, whatever you do, do it for me. Whatever you eat, first offer it to me. Whatever charity you want to give it first give it to me. And whatever austerities and penances you want to perform them for me. In this way, the karmis are directed gradually to come to develop Krishna consciousness. Similarly, Krishna directs Krishna directs the philosophers to approach him gradually by discriminating between Brahman and Maya. For at last, when one is mature in knowledge, he surrenders unto Krishna. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, after many, many births, the wise philosopher surrenders unto me. The yogis are also directed to concentrate their meditation upon Krishna within the heart. and by such continuous process of Krishna consciousness, they can also become free from the clutches of material energy. The devotees, however, are engaged in devotional service with love and affection from the very beginning, and therefore the Lord personally directs them so that they can approach Him without difficulty or deviation. This is stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Only by the grace of the Lord can the living entity understand the exact position of Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. The statements of the personified Vedas give clear evidence that the Vedic literature is presented only for understanding Krishna. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that although all the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita confirms that through all the Vedas, it is Krishna alone who has to be understood. Krishna is always enjoying, either in the material world or in the spiritual world, because He is the supreme enjoyer. For Him, there is no distinction between the material and spiritual worlds. The material world is an impediment for the ordinary living entities because they are under its control. But Krishna, being the controller of the material world, has nothing to do with the impediments it offers. Therefore, in different parts of the Upanishads, the Vedas declare the Supreme Brahman is eternal, full of all knowledge and all bliss. That one Supreme Personality of Godhead exists in the heart of every living entity. Because of His all-pervasiveness, He is able to enter not only into the hearts of the living entities, but even into the atoms also. As the Supersoul, He is the controller of all the activities of the living entities. He lives within all of them and witnesses their actions, allowing them to act according to their desires and also giving them the results of their different activities. He is the living force of all things, but He is transcendental to the material qualities. He is omnipotent. He is expert in manufacturing everything, and on account of His superior natural knowledge, He can bring everyone under His control. As such, He is everyone's master. He is sometimes manifest on the surface of the globe, but He is simultaneously within all matter. Desiring to expand Himself in multi-forms, He glanced over the material energy, and thus innumerable living entities became manifest. Everything is created by His superior energy, and everything in His creation appears to be perfectly done without deficiency. Those who aspire for liberation from this material world must therefore worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate cause of all causes. He is just like the total mass of earth, from which varieties of earthly pots are manufactured. The pots are made of earthly clay. They rest on earth, and after being destroyed, their elements ultimately merge back into earth, the original cause of all varieties of manifestation. Employing this analogy of Brahman with earth, the impersonalists especially stress the Vedic statement, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. Everything is Brahman. The impersonalists do not take into account the varieties of manifestation emanating from the supreme cause, Brahman. They simply consider that everything emanates from Brahman, and after destruction merges into Brahman, and that the intermediate stage of manifestation is also Brahman. But although the Mayavadis believe that prior to its manifestation, the cosmos was in Brahman, after creation it remains in Brahman, and after destruction it merges into Brahman, they do not know what Brahman is. The Brahma Samhita, however, clearly describes Brahman. The living entities, space and time, and the material elements like fire, earth, sky, water, and mind constitute the total cosmic manifestation, known as Bhu, Bhuva, and Swa, which is manifested by Govinda. It flourishes on the strength of Govinda, and after annihilation, enters into it and is conserved in Govinda. Lord Brahma therefore says, I worship Lord Govinda, the original personality, the cause of all causes. And we'll stop tonight. This is 8 o'clock exactly. We'll stop the reading for tonight, and we'll tackle this very difficult chapter, but very simple and clear. It's amazing how Prabhupada can construct sentences that are so clear and simple, but talking such elevated philosophy that even an ordinary human being can understand it. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So we'll stop here and ask the assembled sages to please bless us with their reflections, points of interest, discussions, whatever. Hare Krishna.
First is something from Yadutama.
Haribo Yadutama. Nice offering, Yadutama. Thanks.
It says, Hare Krishna Gurudev.
You remember him from Denver?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Hare Krishna Gurudev. My obeisances and glories to Prabhupada.
All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda.
I am so pumped up for the reading tonight. From Devadarana.
Devadarana, Hare Krishna.
Jaya Keshava Bharti Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Rati Manjari says, Jai Guru Maharaj.
Jai Rati Manjari.
And from Bhakta Rupa.
Bhakta Rupa, Haribo.
He says, Dear Maharaj, please accept my obeisances and all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for reading tonight as always. It was really wonderful to be able to attend your Vyasa Puja party yesterday, Maharaj. The atmosphere was so illuminating and left me feeling really happy and clear. I also got to know you better and I feel grateful for that. I wasn't able to say anything, which is probably a good thing because a fool remains hidden until he speaks up. Really loved what the London devotees were saying about being part of your family. I really see you as a truly loving and caring spiritual uncle. It was wonderful to hear so many devotees singing your glories.
Hare Krishna.
I feel so blessed that thanks to Prabhupada we have family all over the world. I feel especially blessed to be connected with you and the Atma Lounge and Radharaman Prabhu and the brahmacharis in London like Shyam Kishore and Ananta Kripa. And we can't forget the amazing Abhay Prabhu and so many others. I felt your love shining through them all when we visited recently, and it's so nice to know that we have such lovely family members we can go and visit in that beautiful little corner of England.
Very nicely said. That was very nicely said. It speaks exactly what your words were exactly what Prabhupada said when he said that this is a really transcendental family, Krishna's family, includes all living entities. And when we can grasp that and see all living entities is in that family, but some of them are like, what? Rogue. They've gone away from the Father and are, playing around and do whatever they want to do. But the Father always has a place in his heart. And if the Son comes back and actually surrenders to the Father, then it reawakens that natural relationship again. So yes, we are all part of the same family, no doubt. Same spiritual family. It's so mystical how so many diverse personalities from different countries and different social positions and different whatever, they can feel so close. Because normally people are not in the same family. They don't feel close. They can't feel close like that. This is proof that Krishna's family is transcendental. Hare Krishna.
This is still Bhaktirupa. He says, all of the devotees here in Wales absolutely love you, Maharaj. You have a big fan club and we always discuss daily readings and how rare and beautiful it is that we get to associate with you each evening. Thank you for being so available to us. We owe you so much.
Hare Krishna. Well, I owe you a lot because you are the inspiration by which I do this. Hare Krishna.
You are a truly bright light in my life, and I hope with my heart that I can remain a member of this family forever.
Yes, so be it.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for everything you do. We all really love you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Your servant, Bhaktirupa.
Hare Krishna.
Das. From Gopakanya Devi Dasi.
Hare Krishna, Gopakanya Devi Dasi.
Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj and all friends, all glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda.
Haribo.
And from Sudevi Dasi.
Haribo Sudevi Dasi.
He says, Hare Krishna, Maharaj, thank you for this purification.
Hare Krishna.
And from Braj Balaba.
Braj, Haribo.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupada.
All glories to Śrīla Prabhupada.
I like how the same answer was repeated when asked to Narayana Rishi. This is parampara. I try to just repeat what I have been told.
Yes, that is it. That's exactly what I'm trying to do by reading Prabhupada's books, word for word, for all these years. It's the same principle, exact same principle. And it's interesting, isn't it, that these are the highest personalities you can imagine, and still they're referring to higher personalities. Amazing. Truly amazing.
And from Bhaktamatsu.
Hare Bhaktamatsu.
Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda. Maharaj, as we read about these great devotees every day, I'm reminded of Maharaj Khatvanga in the second canto and how he surrendered in just a moment. What is keeping us from attaining a similar fate?
Your attachment to the material energy, your false ego. The false ego can only be dissolved by the process of pure devotional service. So in order to engage in pure devotional service, you have to give up two things. You have to give up the desire for the fruits of your activity, it's karma, and you have to give up the tendency to speculate on your own, to try to figure out things with your own intelligence. And you have to surrender to Krishna. Hare Krishna. There's a verse, Durina Yavadam Karma, Buddhyoga Dhananjaya. It means that you must cast to a far distant place illusion and nefarious activities by Buddhiyogam, the process of devotional service. And then, the verse says, in that, and then from there, you have to surrender unto Krishna. So notice in this verse, I want the Gita to quote it exactly, word for word. Durina yavadam karma, buddhi yoga dhananjaya. See, the thing is, we don't make things up. That's the whole point of the stories that are being told in this verse. We don't have to make things up, because the answer is already there. So when you ask, how can we do this, then you have to respond to the. What am I doing? Where is it? There it is. Durina yavadam karma. It's the second chapter, I think. Durina yavadam. 249. Durina yavadam karma buddhi yogad dhananjaya buddhau shananamadvichcha kripana palahetava. O Dhananjaya, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service, and in that consciousness surrender unto the Lord. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. So here you have, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service. That means you're already performing devotional service. It means you've already surrendered. Otherwise, how could you be doing devotional service? So the first step is to stop doing nonsense. Stop doing abominable activities by engaging the mind and senses in devotional service. Then, in that consciousness, surrender unto the Lord. So that means surrender isn't just a one-off thing. It has to be continued. Continued. And then it ends the verse with those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. So first of all, you have to give up this tendency to enjoy for yourself the material energy. That endeavor to enjoy for yourself the material energy causes one to become farther and farther distant from the Lord, rather than throwing the abominable activities of sense gratification to a distant place and doing devotional service to the Lord. So it comes back again and again, and it always does. The only way forward is to do devotional service to the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Next is from Gauranga Gopal.
Mm-hmm.
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda.
Is this Gauranga Gopal?
Mm.
Okay.
I'm sorry I missed your Vyasa Puja yesterday. I heard that it was wonderful and full of beautiful glorifications of your holiness by your godbrothers, disciples, and well-wishers. I was engaged to distribute books yesterday, and I could certainly feel the empowerment coming from such an auspicious day. Thank you for inspiring us and giving us the energy to carry on Śrīla Prabhupāda's dearmost desire of reading and distributing his books. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Well, it was long. It was what, 6 hours? It was 6 hours.
Yeah, and including honoring prasadam, yes.
Maybe it was, prasadam was after 6?
Well, I think about 5:30.
Uh-huh. Anyway, yeah, it's a long video. It would make a long video, too long to just throw it around. So maybe, anyway, I'll talk to Bhakti Jasmine, who organized it, try to get her to divide it into bite-sized pieces so it can go somewhere, maybe on our website, and maybe even in Mayapur Shashi's YouTube channel, so it can be accessible. I mean, I very rarely say that for something that I do, but it needs that was so beautiful. It'd be nice to be shared.
Next is from Ananda Murti Devi Dasi.
Hare Krishna Ananda Murti.
She says, Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to hear Srila Prabhupada's books every day. Today I got a total vision of the Jiva's life purpose. I understand why the Lord created Jiva. The gradual steps.
Oops. No, you didn't get it. The Lord never creates the Jiva. The Lord creates the material energy that surrounds the Jiva, and therefore He creates the created beings, but He never creates the Jiva. Hare Krishna. He creates the energy which then covers the Jiva, but He never creates the Jiva. The Jivas are eternal. They're co-eternal with the Lord. Hare Krishna.
From Sudevi Dasi. She wrote in all caps, Prabhupada built a house in which the whole world can live.
Yes, absolutely. But whether they'll all come inside, that's another thing.
And another comment from Gauranga Gopal.
Yeah.
He says, I was hearing a short debate/conversation that can be found online between Kavi Karnapur Prabhu in Soho and some Muslim preachers on the street in London. It was interesting to hear about their philosophy and how it prevents them to understand Krishna's transcendental form and activities.
Yes.
I was thinking that their mind would be totally blown away by this chapter.
Absolutely. Therefore, get the Krishna book out.
From Laura Gentile.
From who?
Laura Gentile.
Oh, Laura Gentile. From Dallas?
Houston, I think, is Laura.
Oh, Houston. There's Laura, but I'm not sure it's Laura Gentile.
She says, you do have to use your intelligence, right?
Yes. You have to use your intelligence to understand what is being given by higher authorities. Using the intelligence doesn't mean that you make things up by your attempt with your intelligence. You use your intelligence to assimilate this philosophy, and that requires surrender. In other words, it's not that you use your intelligence to figure out the material nature and then surrender. Real intelligence means to surrender to Krishna, and then you can understand it, the material energy. You can't understand the material energy yourself by making up your own ideas, what it is and what it means. That's the proper use of intelligence. That doesn't mean that you lose your freedom to think, or you lose your freedom to do things. Actually, in the material world, we aren't free. We just heard that. What was it that we heard that connected to that? You can't even approach liberation without Krishna inspiring you to do so. And you can only do that, He'll only do that unless you approach Him with surrender. So the process in devotional line or spiritual line is the opposite of material. One is called ascending and the other is called descending. Aroha and avaroha. The ascending process is to figure it out, look with your senses and mind, and then figure it out with your own intelligence. And the descending process, aroha, means you take the knowledge from the most intelligent. And then with your intelligence, you understand it and apply it in your daily activities, in your daily thoughts. And give up the material conception of life. We heard that also in what we just read. Material world means to accept the material concept of life. As long as you're thinking your intelligence, then you're in the material conception of life. You have a real intelligence, spiritual intelligence, which is a part of the spiritual form, which we have forgotten. We don't know who we are. And you can't figure out who you are with your intelligence, because the intelligence is a part of the material energy that covers you. It's like a newborn child trying to understand who his father is, or understand what it is, and what his father is, or not possible. Hare Krishna.
Next is from Daityari Haridas.
Yes, Daiti Haridas.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, all glories to your daily readings, and all glories to Srila Prabhupada. I really liked what Shivaram Swami said about you yesterday, being one of the few devotees willing to be his friend through thick and thin. You made a really nice point about being kind to everyone we meet in every situation so people will feel inspired, and you leave them with the impression that they encountered the kindest person they ever met. Words spoken with realization carry a lot of potency.
And then Vaisheshika Prabhu put the dot in the I by talking about loyalty and what loyalty is. We have to be loyal to those who are superior to us and who have given us this knowledge. Loyal to Prabhupada, especially loyal to the Founder-Ācārya, who is the source of all this knowledge to us, or the via medium by which we can get this knowledge. It's the same. The story, okay, he's asking, and then he's referring to a higher authority who asked the same question, who's referring to a higher quality, and then it comes back finally to the four Kumaras. And in this way, knowledge is coming down. It's not going up, it's coming down. But it's not anti-democratic either, because even in the structure of the material world, which is being conducted according to the laws of nature, the kings or the administrators, the ones in charge, they have their court, and the court are supposed to be the wisest persons. And they take information and advice from the court. They know they're not autocratic rulers like modern day, thugs, and autocratic rulers who don't care about the people and just live by law, by fear. They make up the laws themselves, and then they enforce the laws by violence and fear. So we can only be free if we're in love with God. That's it. Hare Krishna.
And this is still from Daityari. I really wish I could come closer to being like that to people I meet. Thanks for your example.
Hare Krishna.
In tonight's reading, we heard about the Vedas gradually elevating people through the modes. We in ISKCON have a seemingly much faster route, especially those of us fortunate enough to hear these readings. How does the equivalent of this being raised from ignorance to passion and goodness look in our situation?
Well, we're all born in ignorance. Kalo Shudra Sambhava. Everyone in the Kali Yuga, especially, is born in ignorance. You come out of your mother's womb, and all you can do is cry and look for the breasts. That's it. That's the extent of your freedom. And you have to cry because you itch, you're hungry, or some other disturbance. Some the babies are very, very sensitive to sudden movement or anything that it puts them in insecurity, and then they just cry. That's all they can do. So we're and one stage after another, we're promised, if you do this, then you'll be free. If you do this, then you'll be free. You grow up a little bit, then you can stay up later at night. You go to school, then you can get an education, then you can be free. You get married, and then you can be free. You retire, then you can be free. By that time, you're so wasted you can't do anything. No question of being free. And then when death comes, panic. You have no idea what to do. Hare Krishna.
And Anandamurti says, yes, Guru Maharaj, thank you so much. Jiva is eternal and never created.
Yes. What the created beings means, those beings, they're injected and then covered by the material energy. That's what the created beings means. The conditioned in the bodies of conditioned souls.
And from Rati Manjari. Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you for reading that whole chapter all over again. And thank you for the beautiful celebration. It would be wonderful to have it accessible for a larger audience. It was a wonderful gathering of souls indeed. I am so inspired to be part of your Sangha. Thank you for engaging me in devotional service.
Okay, now we'll engage you once more because we don't know how to, because he published that last night's reading. And probably my Pushashi, because he always does it right away. He always posts it into the YouTube right away. So we need to erase last night's reading. Do you know how to do that? What, Rati? Or do we have to go to Davide, who owns the... Huh? You sent him a message already, okay. Anyway, great idea, Rati. We're working on it. We'll get it done. We may have to break it up into smaller bits, but we'll get it done.
Rati Manjari just said, I think through Davide. Yes.
Okay.
And,
we'll do it.
Yeah. Last comment as of now from Laura Gentile. She says, wow, that was great. All glories.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. And thanks to all of those present in the cyberspace, wherever they are. And please come back tomorrow and share this nectar. This is the next stage, is to share it. This is such wonderful transcendental knowledge and feelings that they must be shared. Then we become complete. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead ki jai. Samaveta Bhaktivedanta ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari. See you tomorrow night, right here in the Haven. Same time, same place, same topic. The transcendental facets of the jewel, supreme jewel of Krishna. Haribol, see you tomorrow.